What's up, everybody, and welcome back to another video from the 10-7 MMA Show. And this is a video that I've been wanting to make for a very long time. And given that it's New Year's, Happy New Year's, by the way, Happy 2025, everybody. I figured now was the time to finally share my 10 favorite MMA YouTube shows of 2024. Now, I feel like I'm a pretty good authority on mixed martial arts YouTube channels because that's primarily what I watch in my downtime. And another reason why I wanted to start this channel, because I watch so much content, I have a lot of information in my brain and I have opinions on it. So that's kind of part of the reason why Justin and I started this channel. But I'm going to go through and I'm not only going to rank them, but for each one, I'm going to give a little context and explain why I like that particular channel. And I'll add in some other things about maybe some other shows that I didn't pick as well along the ways. And that's it. But just know that once again, this is coming from a fan that just loves to listen to news about mixed martial arts, fighter interviews, people's opinions who really know the sport. So without further ado, let's get into it. And this is in reverse order, starting with number 10. So starting at number 10, we're going to begin with the Weighing In podcast. Now, the Weighing In podcast is with John McCarthy, who obviously is Big John McCarthy, one of the most legendary referees in the game, actually created a lot of the rules in mixed martial arts that are still used today. He was, if you look back at the old school UFC videos, way back, he was the ref in there from the get-go. I love John McCarthy. I think this is an amazing show. He also partners with Josh Thomson, who is a former UFC fighter and fought in other organizations as well. They also do commentary for Bellator. Now, ranking them at 10th, the reason why so their show format has sort of stayed consistent over the years, and they really cover everything. Like any fight, both in the UFC and in Bellator and the PFL, they'll kind of run through everything. So it's a very detailed show. And perhaps if you're a more thorough MMA fan than I am, this is an amazing show. But for me, I really only watch the UFC, with the exception of like a couple fights here and there. Again, one person that I've recently discovered is Dakota Ditcheva, who is in the PFL. But with the exception of a few breakout stars in these other organizations, I pretty much watch the UFC. So I am ranking them 10th, not because of the quality of their show or lack thereof. I actually think they have really good insights, although I'm not a fan of Josh Thompson's thoughts on Khamzat Chimaev, but that's for another day. I think they have really great insights and they do a tremendous job. It's just I don't find myself watching them as much as I used to back in the day. Or sometimes I'll go to their podcast, which they do a really good job of timestamping, and look at their particular opinions or thoughts on specific fights. But anyways, a great show. Not throwing shade at them by placing them at number 10, but there we go. Now, moving on to number 9. This is a really good buddy of ours and Justin's, Jesse on Fire. I want to explain why Jesse on Fire is at number 9, because previously he would have been in my top 3 for sure. The reason why I actually really like Jesse's opinions in general on mixed martial arts and the UFC. But what's happened in the last year, you can see his channel's blown up. He's got over 400,000 subscribers. That happened when his channel expanded to cover other topics. And now he doesn't cover much mixed martial arts stuff. He does occasionally, but primarily he's doing more kind of like salacious stories and things about the election and politics and so on and so forth, which is amazing because obviously it's working. His subscriber base has grown tremendously. I believe he's making a ton of money from ad rev and other ways. He also now started another channel with his wife, which is super cool, called Playing with Matches. So he has moved on. While he'll still dabble in mixed martial arts, the reason why I place it at 9th is just because he doesn't talk about it nearly as much as he used to. So it's not a channel that I go to nearly as frequently for mixed martial arts news. That the other content is just not really my style. But anyways, I think he's really knowledgeable about the sport. I like it when he digs into particular mixed martial arts related topics when he chooses to do so. And that's it. But quality, and there you go. There's Jesse on Fire. All right. And by the way, Jesse on Fire, I want to throw this out there. He's the one that helped me and Justin start our show. He had a contest about a year ago or maybe a year and a half. I can't remember exactly when, but I basically participated in that contest. That's how I got to know him. I jumped on a call with him, and he basically helped us from the get-go. He's even been on our show, I think, once or twice, and he said he's open to doing it again. So he's been really, really helpful in getting me and Justin to start our show and get consistent with it and grow it to where it's at now, which you might think is small potatoes, but we're super psyched about the growth and the community that has developed thus far. All right, moving on to number 8. The Weasle. This is a classic, right? 369,000 subs. It's a very big channel. It's been around for a super long time. Everybody knows the Weasle. If you watch MMA YouTube content, you know the Weasle. What is he tremendous with is the fight breakdowns, and especially when we're looking back at decisions, close decisions. Hey, was this a robbery? Did the judges get it right? He does these really detailed videos where he breaks down the fight and looks at all of the strikes, etc., from round to round. And people kind of look at him as an authority when it comes to scoring fights. So I think he does a great job on that front. I think he does a really good job in just terms of the quality of his analysis and his fight breakdowns and fight predictions, etc. I will say that with the creation of these other new YouTubers, people, which I'm going to talk about later, people like MMA Guru, MMA Joey, etc., I don't gravitate to the Weasle's content nearly as much as I used to. So while I still think it's high quality and it's consistent with what it used to be, it's still very good quality. It's just not my absolute go-to. It's not as much of that individual flavor. I think another issue, that I like to see with other content creators. The other thing is he never shows his face. It's just a voiceover, which I know is his style, and that's great. But I do like it when I can see the creator and the person talking on camera. I think it gives us content consumers a better chance to connect with the content creator. And I don't know, it just makes it more engaging. So it is what it is, but Weasle is still great content. That's my number 8. All right. Now we're moving on to number 7, the Jaxxon Podcast. This one is dope. This one came on the radar and on our radar and kind of popped up, I think, within the last year. And it's already gotten up to 237,000 subs, which is dope. Obviously, it's with Rampage Jaxxon and his co-host. I can't remember his name, but he's kind of like the behind the scenes guy. He sort of leads the charge on the interviews, asks questions, does the research, it seems like. But they also have what's his name? Luke. Oh my God, I'm blanking on his name. I'm gonna double check right now. Luke Rockhold. Jeez, can't believe I blanked on that. Yeah, obviously Luke Rockhold joins a lot and he's tremendous. But my favorite person on this podcast is I'm having a total brain meltdown right now. Oh my God. Hold on one second. I'm going to look it up. Oh my God. MH. I can't believe I'm forgetting his name. I just saw a podcast with him. Earlier today. I was here. I'm going to look it up on my phone. One second. This is ridiculous. This is like such a famous fighter. Why am I blanking on his name? Hold on one second. He is to me here we go. TJ Dillashaw. God, how could I forget that? Sorry guys, that was just a brain meltdown. But anyways, TJ Dillashaw is my favorite on this podcast. Obviously, former champ. Of course, he had that issue when he was taking a banned substance to help him with like a really difficult weight cut. I think he was trying to cut to 125, if I remember correctly. But anyways, I love TJ Dillashaw because he is just straight up honest. And that's what we want when we watch these shows. We want honest breakdowns. I think he got some flack for things that he said about Anthony Smith, and Anthony Smith fired back at him. He was basically saying that Anthony Smith quits in every fight, etc. But that's how he felt, and he's not afraid to say it. A lot of folks are afraid to voice their true opinions because they know people's feelings are going to get hurt, but not TJ Dillashaw, and that's what makes the show so great. Rampage Jaxxon is also awesome as well. He's funny. They have and also it's an interview show, so they get really, really good guests. And I think that's partially because Rampage is so famous in the sport. He knows a lot of people. Tremendous podcast. I become such a big fan of it. And I especially tune in when they're interviewing a fighter that I really want to see. So you guys should definitely check this one out. Love the Jaxxon Podcast. Very high quality. Moving on to number 6, the MMA or MMArcade Podcast, I think is how they say it. All right. This one is still under 30,000 subs, right? 29.8, but you guys have to give it a shot. Now, there's a little caveat here. It's called MMArcade because the first half is always about MMA. The second half is about video games because it's co-hosted by the famous Robert Whitaker and his buddy. I think his name is like Johnny or something. But the MMA portion, the first half, and you can always skip the video game portion. I think it's cool. They're doing something different. They're both passionate about video games and MMA, so it's super cool. Obviously, like I don't play any video games, so the second half I usually always tune out, go to something else. But the reason why this show is so phenomenal is Robert Whitaker. Robert Whitaker, you can tell when he dissects fights, when he gives fight predictions, when he talks about the quality of fighters, matchups, etc. He is so intelligent that this show, it just adds a tremendous amount of value to the show. I love listening to their fight breakdowns before fights, after fights, in particular hearing Robert Whitaker specifically, not throwing shade at his co-host, but Whitaker is a pure, you can just see what a master he is. And again, totally honest. Totally honest, not afraid to say what he feels. And yeah, I highly recommend this podcast as well. One of my favorites. It's number 6, but I think like now at this point when we're getting even number 7, the Jaxxon Podcast, like these are all shows that I really love. So you might think, oh yeah, but they're ranked kind of low, but I really enjoy them. And I watch the MMArcade Podcast whenever they drop something. Did some really cool. He talked, gave a really interesting conversation about the whole Jamal Hill, Alex Pereira beef. Gave some great feedback about the Joaquin Buckley, Colby Covington fight recently. So definitely check them out. All right, moving on to number 5 in the top 5 now. Of course, the classic, the Ariel Helwani Show. Everybody knows who Ariel Helwani is. He's the most famous journalist in the sport, probably the highest quality journalist. No, definitely the highest quality journalist in the show. He takes interviewing to the next level and beyond. He has turned it into a pure art form. And you know, if you listen to other people getting into the interviewing game, people like MMA Guru's interviewing people, you hear Mighty Mouse doing, oh, shoot, I just realized I forgot Mighty Mouse's channel. That should have been in here as well. Darn it. Okay, that's a honorable mention. I knew I was going to forget somebody, but I love the Mighty Mouse's channel for specific things. But anyways, you see other folks get into the game, and what you'll notice in the difference of the quality is Ariel is very tactical in terms of when he speaks, when he's silent. He doesn't say too much. He doesn't talk over the guests. He asks these just beautiful, perfectly targeted questions to elicit really great and interesting answers. Sometimes he gets a little bit of flack for asking questions that maybe fighters don't want to answer, or maybe could put them maybe in a slightly precarious position with the UFC, maybe saying something that might rub the UFC the wrong way here and there. Definitely does that. But in his defense, he's doing it in the interest of just pure, raw, good journalism. So you got to check this show out. Now, why is it number 5 and not number 1 or number 2 or something like that? Again, when I watch this show more based on the guests, it's some of his opinions are really interesting, and he's got his boys GC and Eric, New York Rick, and I do like their discussions, but it's not like my go-to. But when he has particular, like when he interviews, I don't know, Ian Gary or Dustin Poirier or whoever he's got on the show, when it's a fighter that I really love, I have to watch that interview on Ariel's show. So it's more dependent on the guest to me than anything. But number 5, he's the master, he's the GOAT, and will continue to be the GOAT, I think, until until he retires. All right, moving on to number 4, Funky and the Champ. This show is so underrated, and I still I don't even know how many people watch this. I wish that they would put this show on ESPN, because the chemistry between Ben Askren and Daniel Cormier is unbelievable. Only topped by the Ariel and DC show, or DC and Helwani show during the pandemic. That still to this day is the greatest MMA show, in my opinion, of all time. It was the perfect balance. Daniel Cormier and Ariel Helwani riffing off each other. It's just such a bummer that they can't bring that back in some capacity. That show was unbelievable. I think politically, because of the issues that Ariel has with the UFC and whatnot, that'll never be resurrected. But that was the best show. But anyways, this one's pretty darn close. Funky and the Champ is amazing. Love Ben Askren. He's such a smart guy. Again, also somebody who's not afraid to speak his mind. Same with Daniel Cormier. And I think it's funny, but I also think they hit the nail on the head with their fight analysis and whatnot. So definitely check this out. Now, I do want to contrast this with the show that is on ESPN with DC and Chael Sonnen. I think it's called DC and the Bad Guy, or Good Guy, Bad Guy, something like that. Man, I will say I can't watch that show. Not because of DC. Obviously, I love DC and I love his YouTube content, even his solo content. And this is me personally. Let me know what you guys think. Again, not trying to be a hater here. I'm just going to be honest. I think like a year or two, I can't remember when. I couldn't watch Chael Sonnen anymore. I feel as though his commentary is bizarre, and it just lacks logic in a lot of cases. Now maybe he's gotten better because I literally can't watch him anymore, and so maybe he has improved, and I apologize if that's the case. But the few times when I sort of do listen to Chael Sonnen or listen to Chael Sonnen in DC, I don't know. I just feel like because of that persona he played in the UFC, talking a little bit of nonsense, it just, to me, it doesn't carry over into this space very well. Yeah. So anyways, just contrasting that, whereas you have DC and Ben Askren, phenomenal duo. Love it. Hope you guys check it out. All right. Number 3. Now we're in the top 3. And we come to pound for pound with Kamaru Usman and Henry Cejudo. Now, a lot of you guys might be scratching your head. I've heard people talk smack about this podcast. Let me tell you why it's amazing. And let me tell you why it's become my number 3. These two do a really good job, first of all, on interviews. I was recently listening to, it's an old episode, but with Umar Nurmagomedov. I love their interviews, and whatever you want to say about Henry Cejudo, he knows the fight game, and he is pretty knowledgeable. But what's incredible about this show is prior to this podcast, I don't think any of us fans really got to know Kamaru Usman. In fact, a lot of people didn't like Usman. I remember there's videos about people saying he's a chameleon. He doesn't even show his true self when he's in interviews. And I get that. I think back in the day, he hadn't gotten comfortable on camera or doing interviews. And I always say we're able to best connect with fighters with those fighters that are able to just simply be themselves on camera. And we know they're being authentic with their audience and with what they're saying. And I think before, and maybe Kamaru Usman would totally disagree with me, but this is the vibe that I got from his interviews, is that he was always calculating his responses and thinking about saying the right thing, not the wrong thing. And it felt contrived a little bit. Whether that was the case or not, that's what it felt like. But now on this show, somehow, maybe because now he's no longer the champ and he's able to, I don't know what it is, but or maybe just by repetition and practice, he's just been able to remove that veil and just be himself. But for whatever reason, he is amazing on the show. Like Robert Whittaker, super intelligent. Robert Whittaker and Kamaru Usman are two brilliant minds in the sport. And I love tuning in to hear Kamaru Usman's fight predictions, his fight analysis. He called the Robert Whittaker Khamzat Chimaev fight beautifully. One of the very few. So many fighters were picking Robert Whittaker. Kamaru Usman nailed it. And what I think is so amazing about the show too is that it's letting people now really become fans of Kamaru Usman. Like, I want to see him fight again so badly because of the show and because of his presence on the show and really getting to see his personality. The last thing I'll say is the chemistry between the two of them is hilarious and awesome as well. Kamaru Usman constantly checks Henry Cejudo, and that's really, really funny. He's not trying to be a jerk about it, but he's correcting him when he feels he needs to be corrected, when he feels like he's wrong. And I don't know, that the dynamic between the two of them is tremendous. Great, great, great show. One of my favorites right now. So definitely check that out. Now we move into the top 2. Number 2, you guys may not be as familiar because it's a channel that's still growing, but I feel like it's growing pretty fast. We got to go to my buddy MMA Joey. And I say my buddy because I comment a lot in his streams, and he's been really, really cool with me. He's even been on one of our streams on the 10-7 show. He's given me a lot of feedback, a lot of recommendations on how to grow the channel. And I've tried to implement everything he says, and it's working. So, but back to his channel, the things that I like about MMA Joey are okay, I'm going to try and list them off. Number 1, he sometimes takes unpopular views because, I mean, it's what he truly believes. Case in point, he gave a lot of support to Bilal Muhammad, who's not a super popular fighter. And he actually changed my mind on Bilal Muhammad, which I thought was really, really cool. I love that he supports a lot of the Dagestani fighters that sometimes get hate or say people talk about Dagestani privilege. And he sort of dispels that notion of the quote unquote Dagestani privilege. He supports people like Magomed Ankalaev that I feel like nobody supports. So I love it when he does support a lot of these fighters that don't have a big following, and people are willing to brush aside and let them get looked over. So that's really cool. He's also very, very knowledgeable about the sport. He's been a long time fan. I think he said I don't know how long he's been watching it, but he's been watching it for forever, and he knows his stuff. So I do love to tune in to hear his analysis, and he's not afraid to go deep on fighters when he feels like they deserve it. I don't think he is doing it unfairly, but I think yeah, when he feels that fighters need to be criticized, he goes in on them, and that's not my favorite part of the show. I'm not always the biggest fan of taking those negative perspectives or focusing on the negatives of the sport, but in some way, I think that has to be there. We need balanced criticisms and critiques, when they're warranted. And so somebody's got to do it. And I think Joey does a really good job of doing that. But anyways, I'm just saying that's not my favorite pieces of content from his channel, but he does that as well. I think you might know him for really criticizing Michael Chandler for kind of putting his career on hold for so long, waiting for this Conor McGregor fight. MMA Joey famously said, like, back a year and a half ago or two, a really long time ago, that this fight was never going to happen. Seems like he was right. Pretty crazy assertion back when he made it, but now everybody has kind of come to agree with what he said long ago. So MMA Joey, he's the man. Definitely check him out. He live streams all the time too. Great work ethic. And I think that's why he's getting such a great following. But his topical videos, I think, are the best. But his live streams are fun too, because you can just chat with him and he responds to all the comments, not just paid donations. So he's the man. And moving on to number one, you guys all know this guy by now, the MMA Guru. Even though he's not the biggest channel listed here with 269,000 subs, I think he gets the most views by far, by a large margin. His views consistently for each video is always above 100K, which is amazing. If you guys aren't as familiar with sort of the dynamics of YouTube, even when you have 269,000, you're not getting 269,000 views on every video, because not every video is going to hit every subscriber's interest, etc. But his channel has blown up. Now, I'm going to list all the things that people may not realize that are amazing about MMA Guru. Number one, he is like actually kind of a comic genius. His ability to do impressions and just like off the cuff take requests from people to I mean, he just does these masterful impressions of all fighters. I mean, he literally could be a professional comedian. And you add that in with his immense knowledge. He's really, really knowledgeable. Whatever you want to say, what people want to say negative about the MMA Guru, he is one of the most knowledgeable, if not the most knowledgeable people on the sport on YouTube. I would say MMA Joey is up there, but I think MMA Guru takes the cake. He knows the sport backwards and forwards, and he's tremendous with his fight predictions and fight analysis. And look, nobody's going to be right 100% of the time, but even when he's wrong, I think he gives a tremendous explanation and does a great amount of research and really makes really good points, but you just can't always be right. So I think that's great. I love it when he goes out to defend fighters like MMA Joey that the UFC is overlooking. He's really gone on a campaign to defend Tom Aspinall, for example, and push for him getting a title fight. I may not have agreed with every stance he took on that whole issue, but it doesn't matter. He's sticking up for fighters that he believes need backing, and that's super cool. The little bit of things that I would say, if I look at all the channels that I watch, this is the one that I watch the most, probably. Oh my God, his live streams are amazing. So now he's gotten too big to respond to every comment, but his ability to respond to paid comments, nobody does it better than him. He pretty much never misses a paid comment, a donation comment, and he responds to it, answers the question. People need to give him way more credit for that. That's hard. Because I've donated on other channels like that, and a lot of people miss them all the time, or maybe they'll take like 5 or 10 minutes to respond. MMA Guru is on it, and he gets loads of donations. So you have to give him a lot of respect there. Now, some of the things that just aren't my style, like when he goes after and really attacks certain fighters, and when they haven't attacked him and almost bullies them a little bit, that's not exactly my cup of tea. Some people like it. Some of those videos get massive views. So, hey, he's doing something right. But I'm not as much of a fan of that side of the channel, more like the dark side of the channel, if you will. But People like it, and yeah, he's killing it. But you couple that with a tremendous work ethic. I mean, the guy hustles and grinds, and I think a lot of people overlook that. But yeah, he's really, really good. Another thing that he's been trying to get into is also the fighter interviews. I think he's getting better with the interviews because it's an art. I mean, he's brand new to it, and he's also probably starstruck a lot of the times when he's interviewing fighters. Obviously, he's not as smooth with it and as honed in as Ariel Helwani or some of these other journalists, but I think he's figuring it out. The one thing I will say though is he's not afraid to be unpopular. And so for a long time, he'd go after fighters and say things about fighters and be really unbiased. And I kind of tend to notice that when he interviews a fighter and maybe becomes friends with them or whatnot, it seems to maybe be leading down a road where his opinion might be slightly tainted, and maybe he has a harder time being honest about that particular fighter. Like he's close with Dricus du Plessis, or I know he really likes Colby Covington and just interviewed him. And I'm not saying he becomes totally biased by any means. Still does an awesome job. But that's my only thing is, like, I wonder sometimes, and hey, he should do whatever he wants. If he wants to keep interviewing fighters, more power to him. He's going to only get better because you can tell he's a very he's a very smart individual, extremely bright. But yeah, I don't know. That's the only thing I'm like, maybe these fighter interviews might taint the sort of like purity of his commentary, whether negative or positive for certain people. But anyways, that's my 2 cents. But there we go. MMA Guru tops the charts. That's my top 10 list. Again, honorable mention to Mighty Mouse's YouTube channel, which is tremendous. Probably would have ranked it somewhere, I don't know, like maybe 5 through 7, something like that. I do love the channel, but not all the content is my cup of tea, but certain pieces of content are really great on that channel. That's it. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Which ones of these are your favorites, or did I miss any that are really tremendous that you think I should have had on this list? If you're new to the channel, make sure to click subscribe if you want to see more from us, and make sure to check in with our Monday and Friday live shows with Justin Guitar Hero James, former UFC fighter and professional mixed martial artist. That's all. Thank you guys so much for joining. We'll see you in the next video. Take it easy.